Welcome back, adventurers, to another edition of the Epic Social Adventure Cast. We have a fantastic guest today. We're going to be interviewing Dane Kramer, who is a hiker, a backpacker, and just all-around great guy. He's originally from the Somerset County, PA area, and he's been hiking and backpacking in that area for many, many years. In addition to his backpacking, he's also a published author. So welcome, Dane.
Hey, welcome. Thanks, Adam. Good to be here. Good to be on your show. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Absolutely appreciate you being here. So just going to kick things off. Just kind of tell us about yourself. Tell us about your backpacking, your hiking, your books, all those great things.
Sure. Okay. Well, as you said, I'm from Western PA, and that's where I live currently. Still in Western Pennsylvania. Grew up here, sort of in a rural country setting, and really, I'm only living like 6 miles from where I originally grew up. So, still here in Western Pennsylvania. Work full time for an insurance company. So, boring. But I don't. I don't live to work, as they say, but I work to live, and got a lot of other interests and other things going on. So, still in Western Pennsylvania, and backpacking and hiking in this section, and not just this section, but in other sections of the east and even out west a little bit, has been a passion of mine for quite a number of years now. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
So you are a published author. I know you've written several books, and we'll get into some of that here in a little bit. But really, I want to make sure that we start with some kind of the basic questions of really what got you involved in hiking and backpacking in the outdoors. I know you said you lived in the rural area, so that probably has a lot of impact in it. So just kind of give us an insight to Dane as a little boy growing up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, that was a big part of it. My dad and his dad cut out of a couple of acres in the woods a house where we grew up, and so our back door literally swung right into the woods, and so we were rock hopping since we were kids, just running around. But I didn't know anything else. That's all life was just running into the woods. But it really wasn't until I'm gonna guess I was in my late 20s. Something like that, when I began. And I don't even know the year anymore. It was probably around 1993, 1994 that I was invited to go on my first backpacking trip. And I remember the first time I was invited, I thought, oh, I'll never do that. I'll die. I thought I can't do that.
Right.
And yeah, so but some friends had invited me along, some guys that I knew, and they had gone on a couple of trips, and they said, well, come on along, and okay. And I borrowed a backpack, borrowed some equipment, and I wore jeans and a flannel shirt, if I recall right, and some canvas tennis shoes, and started hiking, and I just fell in love with it right away. I mean, this was just a lot of fun, and I'm not even sure really what the appeal is. I just like to do it,
Yeah, absolutely.
So that sort of started it. My friends took me out, and they showed me how they made meals and how we did things, and of course it was on the Laurel Highlands Hiking Trail, or the LHHT as we call it around here, which runs in Western Pennsylvania. It's a 70-mile backpacking course. And we hiked on that. That's where I sort of cut my teeth as far as backpacking is concerned. And hiked with them for quite some time. And then eventually I thought, well, I just want to break out on my own. So I started doing sections of the AT and just other trails, and just sort of branched out over the years, and just got deeper and deeper involved in it, to lead me to where I am today.
Fantastic. And you mentioned the LHHT there. One of the things that, I'm familiar with, I've come out and backpacked a very large portion of it twice now with you all. And Brian Ford from Hike by Faith and the LHX 2017 and 2018 crew. And it's a beautiful trail. It really is. I've had a great time on the trail. Of course, being out there with everyone was a fantastic time. But for you, how did you fall in love with the LHHT? What kind of keeps you going back?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm not sure I have a really good answer for it. But it's the trail I started on, and I can be out my back door currently and be on that trail in about 20-25 minutes. So it's so close to my house that I just often find myself going there. Maybe a Friday night after work, schedules change. I'm free for the weekend. I throw my pack together, and I can be there in a half an hour. I can be at least on a section of it. So because it's so close, it has sort of become my default trail. Good or bad, that's what it's become. But I've talked to a lot of other people, and when I tell them that, they get jealous because they say, "Oh my goodness, we have to drive 2.5 hours to get to a place where we can hike and kind of get out back, and I can get there so quickly." So it's just a place that I've grown accustomed to, a place that I'm close to, and a place that I enjoy going to. And so it's again, because it's close is just why I get there so frequently, and so it's my default trail. It's where I go a lot. In fact, I've a couple of years ago I just realized, you know what, Dane, you got to get off the Appalachian Mountain Range, go somewhere else, and I started making some trips out west, just simply to break it up a little bit. But when it comes down to it, if I've got a afternoon or a weekend off, that I go to the LHHT. It seems like.
Well, yeah, and for you, like you were saying, it is definitely a convenience thing, obviously, because it's right there. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be very, very both excited to know that it's very close to them, potentially, but then also very jealous as well, because you don't have to travel very far to have an amazing trail right there for you to hike. And because it's so close, you have really become part of a much larger community related to the LHHT there. So can you kind of explain the community and how you got involved, and also kind of maybe describe your book a little bit on how that's also helped increase the community around the trail itself?
Yeah. It's a interesting story, I think, and it's a story that's ongoing, Adam. It hasn't been told, and the book's closed on it yet. It's kind of morphing. Let me back up a little bit in time. When I started backpacking, I would come back and I would journal my hikes. There was something about sitting back and writing a journal about what we did, and I'd pass it around to my friends, and they kind of liked it. And I told the stories of what we did, and I enjoyed writing. Writing was something that I, for a long, long time I've enjoyed doing. So eventually someone said, you need to get a website and start publishing your hiking journal. So I did, back in the, oh my goodness, this is back in the mid 90s. I used one of those free sites, and set it up, and eventually from one thing to another, I got my own, eventually got my own domain and have my own website up there, featheredprop.com, or just simply danekramer.com. But anyway, so I was journaling my hikes, and I still remember vividly the day that the book kind of hit me. I was hiking; it was pouring down rain. We were on the LHHT, a friend of mine and me. We were hiking together, and I was thinking about the journal. I was thinking of what I'm going to write when I get back. I was thinking about how I'm going to tell the story and what I'm going to do with it, and so on and so forth. And just pouring down rain, and all of a sudden the idea hit me. Instead of a journal to put up on the website, how about a book? And I just thought, wow, I don't think there's a book about this trail. And so I stood there, and when my buddy, his name was Dave, when he caught up to me, I told him, and he kind of liked the idea. And so that's when it was born. It was just in that pouring down rain, getting ready to actually finish up a hike. I thought, I'm going to write a book. And then so I thought, well, I'll come back and I'll through hike the trail, and then write the book. So a couple of years later, it took a while to get it done, but I through hiked the trail, and then I started the writing process. And the writing process was really about interviewing the park personnel who designed and the trail, who blazed the trail, who maintained the trail. Got a lot of cooperation from the state park folk. They were just they really fell over themselves trying to help me out. And I would drive up the sections, and I would just explore, and I would talk to people who live nearby, and the stories just started coming out. It was just really fascinating just to talk to different people around the areas. And so my book, Romancing the Trail, I hope to think that it's full of stories. It's really about it's not just a journal of a hike, but it's really the stories that I encountered and the stories that are involving that trail itself. So, anyways, that book, 2006, I think it was when it was first released, and it is, it has a local following here. A lot of the people who hike the trail know about it because it's regional. You get out of Western Pennsylvania, no one's ever heard of me or my book or the trail, but
which isn't true anymore. You've got folks all over the United States and Canada now that definitely know about it from hiking the trail. So
I guess so. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's part of this growing community that you're talking about. So, and social media has, I think, a lot to do with at least how these connections are being made. The trail is wildly popular. People do and have for a long time come from all over the place. When I say all over the place, I mean all over the continental United States, and certainly we've had international hikers on it from time to time. Even prior to the social media onslaught, that this was something that was, people came because it was a trail that word got around, but now so much more. Its fame has spread, and through social media, through the connections that hikers are forming, and backpacking groups and so on and so forth. The word of this trail has gotten around, and so it's become very, very, very popular, and it is kind of interesting. And I don't want to sound like I'm blowing my own horn here or something like that, but the last time I was on the trail, I was hiking, and I counted this guy, two guys. They were actually walking along. I was heading north, they were heading south, and we encountered each other, and we chatted for a little bit. And he said, "Hey, do you have a YouTube channel?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Are you Dan Kramer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh yeah, I've seen your videos about the trail and so on and so forth." So it was kind of cool. But yeah, he recognized me out there, and but that just goes to really speak about the popularity of the trail and the people doing the research and looking it up and trying to find out more information about that. So yeah, the community has really, really taken off. There's a LHHT Facebook page that's got a couple thousand members, and it's a good group of people, and it's just amazing to see how that's taken off.
Very, very neat. I mean, being out there, one of the things that I noticed while on the trail was it is a very clean trail. It's very well marked, and from the community, you can definitely see those folks who are being active, just being a part of the Facebook page. I joined just to see updates and things like that. I think last year, and have continued to stay on just because I like seeing it grow and see what people are doing on the trail, because I now know all those places they're talking about, the different shelters and those kinds of things. And one of the things that you mentioned was your through hike, which is really just hiking the trail from end to end. So you start at one place and end, and it is a straight line, if you will, in terms of it's not a loop or anything like that. So
correct.
You have to have all of those logistics created in terms of who's going to pick you up in the end, or what happens if in the middle something goes wrong. You've done this. I mean, how many times have you through hike just start to finish the trail itself?
I have 8 through hikes under my belt now.
Oh, wow.
So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And while we were out there, this past April, you were in the midst, or quite actually, I think it was the beginning of your yo-yo. Can you kind of explain what that yo-yo is and how that all came about, and just kind of walk us through that?
Sure. A yo-yo in hiker lingo is to go end to end and back. To go out and back. Almost any day hike you take is typically a yo-yo. You park your car, you get on the trail, you hike out for a couple of miles, you turn around, you come back. It's just out and back. But typically it means to go from end to end and then come back. It began. Well, you had mentioned Brian Ford from HBF Outdoors. Brian's a good friend of mine. We've hiked a number of times in the past together, and he was throwing together LHX 2018. He had put together LHX 2017. I won't go into all that right now, but a group, a collection of hikers came together, and he was putting together another hike for 2018. He invited me to go along once again, and I was, only too happy to go. But as I was thinking about it, I was just thinking, maybe I should do something different this time. And it's not like I had wanted to for a long time. I hadn't really thought about it much. I just thought about doing something different. And I thought, wait, what if I did a yo-yo? I hadn't done one yet. And the more I thought about it, just the more excited I got about, really just the planning, mapping it out, getting it done. The physical challenge of it was also something that had a lot of appeal to me. And so I planned the trip around LHX 2018. I started a few days before you guys did. I think day 3, I hooked up with with you all, and we walked, I think, 3 days together then before, plans changed a little bit. Then I finished the trail and turned around and went back to the other end. So it was a phenomenal hike for me. I just loved every bit of it.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I noticed from the trail, because I actually hiked with the crew in 17, was just the crazy swing in the temperature and the weather, and I would assume that obviously that's probably one of the hardest things that you've experienced while on the trail. Can you kind of go into any, not only that, but also any other additional, just very difficult moments you found yourself while on the trail?
During this yo-yo, we had amazing weather changes. It was the hike. I had actually planned it 11 days, but I was able to get it done in 10. But in those 10 days, I think I saw everything. And day 3, my day 3, which was your day 1, as you recall, we had snow that morning. That night, the night before, the temperature got down into the low 20s, and my sleep system was rated at 40 degrees, so I was about 20 degrees lower than my sleep system's rating, and it was a miserable night. I'm telling you, it was.
Oh man,
it was tough. I was in my hammock. I didn't have a fire or anything like that, and it was a tough night to get through. I was pretty cold. I made it, obviously, but it was cold. And then that morning I woke up, and sure enough, there were flecks of snow flying around, and it's like, wow, that was crazy. And then 3 days later, especially would be my day 7 coming back onto the trail out of Ohio Pile. That day, I think the temperature got near 90 degrees. It was unreal. It was terribly hot, and really taxed me. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. Those might have been, you asked me about, maybe some of the most difficult moments. Actually, those 2 days in a row were pretty taxing. I know you recall my day 6 coming into Ohio Pile.
Yes.
It was an 18-mile day for me. I pulled out a 653 shelter area that morning, and then those 18 miles, I've done them before, but I hadn't done them in that kind of heat. Typically I'll do a fall or an early spring hike. This was spring, but I just wasn't anticipating the heat as it was. There was no canopy, so there's really no shade walking through the woods, and the sun was just pounding down. And it was brutal. It was brutal, Adam.
That sounds like it. And doesn't that section of the trail have a nickname, because it's pretty steep coming down into the Ohio Pile area?
Yeah, from around about 7.5 mileposts, something like that, to just a little past 6 for about 1.5 miles, I'll say. It's called Heart Attack Hill, and it's just it's an unrelenting descent or ascent, depending on which way you're going. It's very, very steep, and it just doesn't seem to end. I mean, it just keeps going, and so whether you're climbing it or whether you're descending it, it's brutal. If you're descending it, it'll just chew up a pair of knees so quickly, and going up it in the heat is just it's tough. It was tough, and both of those days were real hard. Matter of fact,
because I say you not only came down that, but then within 24 hours you turn around and hiked back up that section again.
Yeah, I did the 18 back up, and I'll tell you what, Adam. That night, as you recall, we were in the yurt. We got into High Pile and had the yurt. And there was some night at night I was thinking, I don't think I can do this. I can't do this. This is crazy. I can't do this. I mean, my head was splitting. I had a bad headache I don't do heat very well. I just I'm a cold weather kind of guy. I've always been a bit of a mudder, and I just don't do heat. and I had a headache and I was tired and I was just thinking, oh my goodness, I got to turn around and go up that 18 miles, and it's supposed to be warmer, and I kept thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'll never do this. And it was a low point for me, thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, I guess I could quit the hike. And there was a moment where I was considering doing that. But at some point in the middle of the night, as I'm laying there in the yurt, I just thought, you know what? Don't do all 18 then. Just go to the first shelter area, go 6 miles in, stop, and stay there. And if you can't finish the hike, you can't finish it, or whatever the case may be. And as soon as I told myself that, just don't push it for 18, just go 6. I thought I can do 6. And so I guess I fooled myself. So the next morning I started. Brian shuttled me out to the trail, jumped on it, and I'm fresh, I'm feeling good. And the first 6 just flew by. And I thought, just keep going.
Yeah.
So I did, and it was another brutal day. I mean, till the end of the day, I was feeling it. I was definitely feeling it. It was a tough 18 miles, and mostly because of the heat. Because I've done the 18 miles both north and south on other occasions, and it wasn't quite as taxing as it was this time. So.
Yeah, it was, I mean, for me, coming from Arizona to go, our first day being that very, very cold temperature of, I think we clocked it at like 22 or something like that, and snowing, and you can always layer up and put more on and become warm, and as you start moving, you warm up, and then of course, in the evenings we be around the fire, huddle in the shelters, which the shelters along the LHHT there is just fantastic, and one of the things we noticed was that those warm days, there's just no way around being hot. You were going to be hot, and like you were saying, that last part, there's just not a lot of shade, and outside of just what can I do to get there? I'm not going to quit. I'm going to continue on. Like you said, tricking yourself. I'm only going to go 6 miles. Getting that 6 miles, going, all right, I feel fine. Let's keep pushing forward.
Right.
But really, at some point, though, you're going to keep going and get to what I would consider more the flatlands that basically lead you into that sort of last section there. And at that point, you probably had a little bit of a reprieve and could take a nicer break, knowing that you were pretty much done for the day at that point.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a grueling 18-mile, ascent or something like that the whole time. There certainly are some flats. You just pace yourself. And really, that's what I did. Although I remember the last 4 or 5 miles of that day were just they were pretty tough again. I mean, it's not that the terrain was getting bad, but the heat was really was nailing me again, and it had been an 18-mile day. And Adam, the funny thing about it is the last day 10 on that yo-yo. It was supposed to be day 10, and it was supposed to be my next to last day. My plan was to go to what was called the Route 271 shelters. I was going to go 10 miles to that shelter and just stay the night. Well, I got an early start, and I was there by noon. I thought, well, I can't camp at noon. I mean, so I thought, well, I'll go to the next shelter, and I went to the next one, and I got there, and by that time I had done about 18, 19 miles. And when I got there, I was going to, I'll stay here. Mm-hmm. And then I'm thinking, I'm 5 miles from quitting this, and I could do this. Right. And so I stopped and actually had dinner, made myself a hot meal. Joanne, one of the trail ridge runners, I guess you call it, she takes care of that section. She was aware of my hike. She came down and met me, and we chatted for a while and stuff. And I said, all right, I'm just going to finish it. So I did 24 miles on my last day. And my point is, it's so mental, because I sailed through that 24 miles. I mean, I sailed, but I was going on adrenaline. I was going to get a shower that night. I was going to see my wife. Everything was, and not at all compared to the 18 where I was, under that grueling sun, and I had a big day ahead of me. And, so it's, so mental at times out there.
Yeah. And one of the things that we were, like the crew, while we were finishing our trip, and you had continued on, and you were sending the text messages over to Brian, the updates. And as they were, digging, they'd come in, and Brian would be like, "All right, he's at this mile marker. He's made it to this campsite and whatnot." And we're just every time we'd hear a message, it's like, "Holy cow, he's just burning through those miles." And so it was fun to not only have hiked that whole section, but then knowing what that section is like. It was fun to see them sort of light up and really be cheering you on, even though you really had no idea that we were cheering you on. We were doing it definitely in spirit. So.
Well, and Adam, one thing I also recall getting off the trail, and you were standing there, and you came up to me with a glass of water in your hand. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, both Scott and I were there, and we had water, and I think
grabbed my pack off my back.
Pack, and we even I think we had some sacks and stuff, but you were at that point probably borderline, looking at dehydration, maybe some heat exhaustion was setting in. So we sat, you sat down, continued to drink water, and eventually got back to sort of that human status again. But,
exactly. Yeah, so, I was so nauseous I couldn't eat. Yeah,
and that's a rough day regardless of where you're at. That heat. The heat will definitely zap you, especially while hiking and backpacking you, and the sun more so than anything, I think.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And one of the things that we've kind of been talking about through the whole chat here is, working with Brian Ford from HBF Outdoors, working with us in general, Epic Social, with just being together and getting outdoors and really just taking a group of people who've really probably never met in real life, or they have met through social media and things like that, and really getting them out to connect in a safe environment, and an environment in which is something that isn't they're not used to. Coming from Arizona, I had no idea what to expect the first time I came out to Pennsylvania, and we had we've had folks from Canada come out, we've had folks from the Midwest and things like that, Illinois and Missouri. Just kind of walk us through kind of how being involved in these trips and seeing the differences in the groups of people and how, even though we're all completely different, we've still managed to mesh really well, and many of us still continue to talk even a year or two after the adventure. Just kind of how have you've been just kind of walk us through how you came into this and how you've either liked it or disliked it and things like that.
Well, I can say very clearly that I loved it. It was fantastic. Brian Ford, we've mentioned him several times. Brian put these hikes together for the purpose of bringing people together to connect, bringing people together who may not know Western Pennsylvania or the trails and not know what to expect and so on and so forth. And so he had asked me to tag along, since again this is my backyard. Yeah, it was, and especially both trips we meshed so well. The personalities just came together, and just a lot of camaraderie, a lot of fun, and that's just what the trail is. I think for so many people is you can put people together who may not on the street, maybe they're not gonna buddy around that much, or they're not gonna pal around, but you put them together on the trail. And there's just something about walking out there together that just brings you together. Just kind of cements you. You hike the trail together. You've been there, and it just kind of there's just something there that brings people together. And again, in normal situations, it's just not gonna happen. But there it does, and that's just kind of the magic of the trail.
Yeah, absolutely. You have that connection of good, bad, and everything in between. Even though the first year we saw our difficulties, in the second year we also saw a completely different set of difficulties, and in general it wasn't necessarily a failure, it wasn't a bad thing. We all set out with that sort of ideal that we were going to hike and have fun and really enjoy each other's company more than completing the miles. If we got to our mileage, great. If not, then we would figure out what we needed to do and still continue on that trail spirit of, even if we needed to go into town, we'd still find fun things to do, whether it's stay in yurts or whatnot, and just wander around parts of Pennsylvania that many of us have never been to, even though those are your backyard, Brian's backyard, for example, and we got to experience really, in my opinion, what the best of the state, best of Pennsylvania is, because we got to see and meet lots of different people. The trail angels along the way that helped us
Right.
through the different trails, the trips both years in terms of shuttling us around or bringing us, fantastic food and things like that. It was amazing to see how, sort of that trail world has translated not just on the big trails. It's not just on, the AT or the PCT, things like that, where it's, even the small local ones, in comparison, the AT is a monster compared to the,
Right.
LWHT here in terms of just mileage. But when you compare, what it requires to hike the trail, it's very up and down. It's full of rocks. It's got some fantastic moments for photos and thinking and pondering and all of those things. And it's definitely very easy to see how you can fall in love with that trail specifically. And I know Brian had brought you on at least the first year to kind of put together a movie. It's sort of a documentary of the hike, and you do additional videos as well. Can you kind of tell us about your video creation process and kind of how you've morphed from going from that diary, sort of journaling, into doing
Yeah.
the same thing but on video?
Yeah, when you're exactly right. That's what it morphed from. It started out as journaling, as I said earlier, that I started out with writing my hikes out, publishing my journals on, and it just, that was fine. And I still enjoy writing. I still like to write. But a number of years ago, I don't know what made me think of grabbing a camera. And I did. I took a camera out and, shot some video, and it was fun to do. And I had an editing program that I worked with. Looking back now at some of my earliest videos, I'm borderline ashamed of them. They're very crude, very primitive, very primitively done, but over the years, they've changed somewhat. I've changed how I've done them, and in my opinion, they've gotten better. Maybe somebody else thinks not, but it's a certain style that I've kind of developed for myself, and it's just who I am. And so and actually, a couple years ago, I had gone out to Colorado at a hike in the Rocky Mountain National Park, and that video from that trip, I think really that one changed me on when I came back. What I did is I wrote the script for that on the plane flying back. I started working on a script. I'd never done a script before, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a script, and so I wrote the script, and then I actually came back and found the video to fit around the script that I had, that I'd written. And so that was new for me. I'd never done something like that, and so since then, I always haven't done it like that anymore. But I've worked real hard on a script, a narrative that goes along with the video. It's not just walking through the woods, say, hey, I'm crossing this bridge, or I'm looking at this tree right now, or those are fine. That's just not me. So I've tried to do more, like you said, more of a documentary style video. So they've changed along the way. And I'm sure the next one will be different than the last one, but that's how I see it going right now anyhow. And it's been a lot of fun for me to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a continual process. You're learning new technology, you're learning different tools and ways to shoot, obviously. And of course your style will continue to change over time. And so
Sure.
it's that educational process. And
Absolutely.
from there, which of the videos you've created a couple now related to the LWHT. You were mentioning the one in Colorado. You recently also done one about Wyoming, the trip out there, I believe, or was it Montana?
Montana. Yeah, Montana.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. So of those, which one's really been your favorite that you just always kind of go back to as your, you just have either the best memories or just it's your favorite? Yeah.
Well, it's a good question. And I'm not sure. The answer to it's kind of tough. There's one video that does stick out in my mind now. It's an earlier video, and it's really just because of the layers that are in the video that, of course, no one would know just watching it. But it's a video called A Personal Journey, and it's probably about 5 years old by now. Here in 2018, I'd have to look it up to see when it was, but it's on my YouTube channel. What the video was is, well, actually, there's YouTube channel called Black Owl Outdoors. It was wildly popular a number of years ago. I don't think they do much anymore. They had a video contest, and they asked people to submit their own videos, and so I submitted a video, and that's the video called A Personal Journey. I submitted that to Black Owl Outdoors, and actually was one of the 5 finalists in their contest, which was just wild. I couldn't believe that they had picked me, But anyways, that video still stands out in my mind as really one of my favorites. Now, it's an earlier one, so it didn't have some of the things that you would find in some of my current videos. There's no narration in it, for example. But one of the reasons why it's one of my favorites is the soundtrack for that song my one daughter danced to at a recital. She did ballet, and she used that song to dance to. And as I'm watching her dance, I'm thinking, I could hike to that song. But it's a real melancholic tune. And at the time, my daughter and I had been going through a little bit of estrangement. We weren't doing as well as we should have been, or as we are today. And so part of that was about hiking to the song that she danced to, and it was about just dealing with that personal journey of the relationship. Now, of course, you turn the video on, you're not going to get any of that. But if you knew that, if you watched it, it might come through, because there was some maybe even pain coming through at different times. And if you knew that now and back and watched it, it would make a little more sense to you. It wouldn't make any sense to you just watching the video. But that still stands as probably one of my favorite videos, just because, again, of the layers to it and what was really behind some of the video. And then again, because it was on Black Owl Outdoors and was picked as a finalist, I didn't win, but I was picked as a finalist, and that's how I met Chris Martin. I know you know who Chris is. Chris, he's an amazing videographer from out. I believe he's in Wyoming right now. And then he and I hiked together in Colorado a few years after that. But that's how he and I got connected. He was also a finalist in that same contest, and I think that the two of us, I think we brought up the bottom of those last 5, but somebody had to. So that's one of my favorites. But of the more recent ones, I would have to say probably my most recent, and that is from the Yo-Yo, which is called Best Under Load. I think that's my favorite one. Montana would certainly be a very, very close second. Brian Retzler, who's also he has a YouTube channel called Great Lakes Backpacker. He and I hooked up for that trip. Well, that was phenomenal. Going to the beaten path out in Montana, we just had just an amazing time, and that was just an amazing hike. But Best Under Load probably at this point would be my favorite video, just because of all the stuff that was involved in that production of that Yo-Yo hike.
Absolutely, and it is a very fantastic video. Of course, all the
thank you
the links and things like that you've mentioned, we're going to definitely have in the show notes here. So for everybody who's listening, we'll have that in the show notes for you to be able to watch those videos and connect with Dane there. So real quick, Dane, kind of wrap things up. What big adventure do you have coming up next?
I have nothing in the works. Nothing in the works, Adam. I sent an email to Brian Retzler a couple of weeks ago. He and I went to Montana, and I said, Brian, I'm thinking in 2019 I'd like to get back out west again, but we don't have a trail picked, and I haven't heard back from him yet. We don't have anything picked. So maybe something out west in 2019, but at the present, I literally have nothing. The Yo-Yo took a lot of my vacation time. I have some other vacation time used up for other things, and so I don't have anything big planned for this summer or this fall yet. I mean, I expect to get out this fall, and I certainly want to get out this winter. That's my favorite time to be out doing some hiking, maybe do some overnights this winter. So I'm afraid nothing big in the works. But that doesn't mean something's going to happen.
Well, we definitely know where to find you. If you're not doing anything major, we'll definitely find you out on the LHHT for sure.
Absolutely.
I suspect. So fantastic. So to kind of wrap up again, what are the best ways for people to get a hold of you, to follow along on your adventures? Is it YouTube, Twitter? Just kind of let us know what those best ways are.
Yeah, I have a Twitter channel, Feathered Prop. That's sort of my handle for almost anything Feathered Prop. I think Instagram on Feathered Prop, Twitter Feathered Prop, Feathered Prop on Facebook. And Feathered Prop is the YouTube channel. So any of those outlets would be a good way to connect. Of course, subscribing to the YouTube channel, you would get the videos as they come out. But I do tweet and Instagram and things like that. So any of those, if they can just remember the name Feathered Prop, they'd probably find me.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, I greatly appreciate you joining us for the interview here, and wish you the best of luck on your upcoming hikes, and hopefully you'll keep us informed on all of those so that we can definitely follow along.
Well, thank you, Adam, for having me. It's an honor to be here on your show. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Alrighty. And again, for everyone who's listening, we'll have everything in terms of links and how to get a hold of Dane on our show notes. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, depending on where you're at in the week, and just get out there and adventure.